I always believed that trust wasn't something you declared. It was something you lived every single day, built with consistency and protected like something fragile. That's what my 3-year relationship with my boyfriend, Mason, felt like, or at least what I thought it was. I'm Harper, and looking back, it's terrifying how easily you can mistake routine for stability and affection for loyalty. Because what happened still feels like someone took the life I was living and flipped it inside out in a matter of seconds. It all started the morning after Mason returned from what he called his guy's cabin trip, a yearly tradition he had with his old high school friends. He came home smiling, carrying a bag of my favorite pastries, hugging me like he had missed me so much it physically hurt him to be away. The kind of dramatic affection that's so warm and charming you don't question it. And why would I? He smelled like campfire and pine trees, looked tired but happy, and told stories about their fishing attempts, burning food, and laughing until midnight. I had no reason to doubt him. For the next few days, everything felt normal. And maybe that normalcy is what made me ignore the first signs. I noticed him keeping his phone a little closer, but I told myself it was nothing. He said work was chaotic. New clients coming in, constant messages. I didn't like the shift in his behavior, but I didn't want to sound insecure over something that might have been innocent. Then came the night everything quietly shifted. We were going out to dinner, and since my car had been detailed earlier that day, Mason offered to drive. It wasn't unusual, but he kept his phone face down the entire time, sliding it into the cup holder like he didn't want any screen light popping up. When it buzzed a couple of times, he casually turned it off with the kind of forced nonchalance people use when they're hoping you won't ask questions. I noticed, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to overthink. I didn't want to be that girlfriend the truth didn't hit until the next morning. And it came from something so small that it would have felt comical if the consequences weren't so devastating. I got into my car, started the engine, and the Bluetooth screen lit up with a device connection. But not my phone. Not anything I recognized. It read, Mason's iPhone. My heartbeat instantly picked up. That shouldn't have been possible. He had never connected his phone to my car. I stared at the name for a few seconds, telling myself maybe the detailer had accidentally connected it. Maybe Mason had tapped something last night. But before I could rationalize it further, a message appeared. The preview bubble slid across my car's touchscreen like a crack of lightning. I miss you already. Wish you were still here. My breath stopped. Before I could even react, another message appeared. Then another. Short messages, flirtatious messages. One's referencing last night, and how sore she still was, and how next time they wouldn't have to rush. My vision blurred for a second. My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. My stomach twisted like I'd been punched. I didn't want to believe what I was reading. I didn't want to accept that the man who kissed me goodnight, who brought me pastries, who told me he missed me during his trip, had clearly been with someone else. I pulled into an empty grocery store parking lot, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Another message came through, then one even more explicit, and something inside me shifted from confusion to cold clarity. I needed to know everything, not half of the truth, not assumptions, evidence, proof, something he couldn't deny, manipulate, or explain away with some excuse. That's when I discovered something about my car that I had no idea it could even do. When a phone connects to it for the first time, it automatically saves the last chunk of text message history and call logs to its internal Bluetooth memory. I didn't realize what I was doing when I tapped through the menu, but suddenly the screen opened a file I had never seen before. And there they were, full messages. Not just previews, actual complete threads. Every disgusting detail, every affectionate line, every I can't wait until the next time. I skimmed until I felt sick. I stopped when I reached a line that said she still had the blanket they used at the lake house. I recognized that blanket. It was the one I gave Mason for his birthday last year. My heart cracked in a way I can't even explain. But the most nauseating part wasn't the cheating itself. It was when I saw her full name in one of the saved attachments, a photo thumbnail of her leaning over a cabin bed. The kind of picture people send when they think there's someone's secret. Her name burned across the corner of the file. Sienna. Not a random girl. Not someone he met on a trip. No, Sienna. His coworker. The one he said was too dramatic. The one he said annoyed him. The one he said flirted with everyone and it meant nothing. The one he promised I never had to worry about. And now she was in his photos, in his messages, in his cabin weekend. My chest tightened painfully, but instead of breaking down, something cold and sharp took over. I wasn't going to confront him blindly. I wasn't going to cry while he lied to my face. I needed more. I needed everything. And I had no idea that the Bluetooth discovery was just the beginning. Because what I uncovered next made everything spiral far beyond simple cheating into something calculated, hidden, and way more intentional than I ever imagined. I didn't drive home right away because I knew if I walked through that door while my emotions were still exploding inside me, I'd lose the upper hand before I even understood the full scope of what Mason had been hiding. So I sat there in my car, staring at the dashboard screen as if it were some kind of portal into the life he had been living behind my back. The Bluetooth data had given me more than I expected, but not enough to understand how deep everything went. I needed to know for how long this had been happening, what lies he told, what plans he had made with her. I needed to know who the hell I had been sharing my life with. When I finally started driving, it wasn't toward home but toward his office. Not to confront him, I wasn't that reckless yet. I just needed to see something with my own eyes. When I pulled into the lot and saw his car parked there, something about this side of it made me feel both nauseous and oddly steadier. He was exactly where he said he'd be. He was predictable, and predictable meant easier to track. I parked across the street, opened the Bluetooth cache again, and read through the messages one more time, forcing myself to absorb the details I had skimmed over before. One line stood out differently now. I hope she didn't notice anything. The timestamp matched the night he drove us to dinner. My blood felt cold. He had been texting her right before leaving with me, probably while I was getting ready in the next room. Another message from her. "You're such a good liar. It's kind of hot." That one made me want to throw my phone. But anger was useful. Anger made me sharp. I needed sharp. I opened my own phone and searched for the tracking app I had installed months ago when my catalytic converter got stolen. It wasn't meant for people, it was meant for my car, but there was a secondary feature that marked all Bluetooth device interactions, meaning Mason's phone had left a digital footprint in my vehicle even before it sent the messages. And when I clicked history, everything inside me froze. Mason's phone had connected to my car onto other dates, both during mornings he said he was running errands and both within 2 hours of being at his office. That meant Sienna had likely been with him then too. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I sat back in my seat, breathing slowly, forcing myself to think. This wasn't just cheating. This was calculated cheating, comfortable cheating, cheating that involved time planning, coordination, familiarity, betrayal that had already made itself at home long before I noticed the first crack. I wasn't going to walk into this blind. I needed more proof, and I needed it securely. So I drove home, not to confront him, but to do something I never thought I'd do. I backed up my car's entire Bluetooth memory onto a hard drive. Then I created a hidden folder and transferred everything there: screenshots, logs, timestamps, message history. I even filmed a video of the car dashboard screen scrolling through the sensed messages so he couldn't claim anything was edited or manipulated. Once that was done, I finally let myself breathe again. Just for a moment. Just enough to survive the day. Mason came home 2 hours later, kissing me on the cheek like nothing was wrong, smelling like his usual cologne mixed with office air, sliding his arms round me as if we were the picture-perfect couple he imagined we still were. The audacity almost made me laugh. I kept calm. I kept neutral. I didn't flinch when he kissed me. I didn't pull away when he hugged me. I asked about his day. I acted normal, and it worked. He didn't suspect anything. But while he chatted casually, I noticed something I had never seen before. His keys. One of the fobs was new. I asked him about it lightly, trying to sound curious, not accusatory. He shrugged and said it was for a co-working space downtown his team sometimes used. But I already knew he was lying. The fob wasn't for any co-working space. It was for a short-term rental building. I recognized the pattern. My cousin lived in one of those. So after dinner, when he said he was going out to grab groceries, claiming he forgot a few things for the office breakfast meeting, I acted like I believed him. He kissed me, told me he wouldn't be long, and walked out the door carrying his keys and his phone and his lies. The moment he left, I grabbed my laptop and opened the GPS tracker connected to my car's security system. Not for my car but for Mason's car. He had logged into the app once from my device months ago to help me fix an issue, and it had saved his login. I didn't know it would come in handy someday, but oh, it did. I opened the location history, and my entire body chilled. His car wasn't going to the grocery store. It wasn't going anywhere near it. He drove straight toward the rental building, the same one the key fob belonged to. I sat there staring at the map. Moving toward that address, my breath steady, my pulse cold, my mind made of steel. I wasn't going to confront him there. No, not yet. Surveillance before confrontation. Proof before emotion. I needed to know everything. And then something even more unexpected happened, something that shifted everything again because suddenly, halfway to the building, he stopped. The location. Stayed parked for a long minute. Then it turned around. He didn't go to the rental building. He didn't go to the store either. He drove somewhere I never would have predicted, somewhere that made my stomach twist with a different kind of fear. Mason drove to my mother's house, and I had absolutely no idea why. The map. Blinked at me like a warning light, sitting still in front of my mother's house in a way that made absolutely no sense. My first instinct was panic, then confusion, then the terrifying possibility that Mason somehow knew I was onto him, that he'd gone to her to twist the narrative first, to paint me as irrational or unstable, to soften the ground before the truth hit him. I grabbed my keys on autopilot, but halfway to the door I stopped myself because reacting without thinking was exactly what a man like him could exploit. So instead I forced myself to sit down and watch the tracker, breathing through the rising dread while imagining every possible scenario. Mason stayed there for 13 minutes, not long enough for a full conversation, but definitely long enough to drop something off or pick something up or hide something. When he finally drove away, I didn't chase him. I went straight to my mom's house. I rehearsed what I would say, but when she opened the door, she instantly frowned at the look on my face. Before I even got the words out, she said Mason had stopped by to surprise me. That word made my stomach twist. Apparently, he dropped off an envelope meant for me and told her not to let me open it until later tonight because he had something special planned. The phrase felt slimy in a way I couldn't describe. My mom, oblivious to the reality of the situation, handed me the envelope without suspicion. The second I saw Mason's handwriting on the front, I felt bile rise in my throat. I didn't open it there. I thanked her, lied about needing to prepare something for him later, then left. I opened the envelope in my car, and inside was a single sheet of paper, our photos printed on one side, old ones from vacations and birthdays, with sticky notes placed over them. His handwriting covered the notes, saying things like, "I know I've been distant and I want to fix everything and let's talk tonight." The photos, the timing, the forced sentimentality, it was all wrong. It wasn't an apology, it was strategy. He was preemptively staging emotion, positioning himself before I confronted him, planning to use nostalgia and guilt as shields. I stared at the notes until the warmth of the memories they carried turned cold. He knew he was losing control, and this was the move of someone who wanted to stay one step ahead. I drove home with a different kind of resolve, the envelope sitting next to me like a piece of evidence. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw something else that made the cold in my chest spread. There was a car parked 2 houses down, a gray sedan I recognized from Mason's office parking lot. I had no proof it belonged to anyone connected to him, but instinct screamed that it wasn't coincidence. I went inside and didn't turn on any lights. My house felt like foreign territory, a stage where I had to control every step. I checked my windows through the blinds, keeping my movements small. The gray car didn't leave. I didn't know whether it was Mason, someone he sent, or someone entirely unrelated, but after the week I'd had, randomness felt unlikely. I decided to gather more information before he got home. I reopened the Bluetooth archive I'd saved earlier and dug deeper than I had the first time. Not just messages to Sienna. I looked at call logs, app notifications, photo cache metadata, and then I found something I had missed before, something that made my breath catch painfully in my chest. There were deleted messages between Mason and someone labeled only as MK. The messages were older, dating back to months. They hadn't fully synced, but the previews were enough to raise every alarm in my body. "She's still clueless. You don't have long. Get your story ready. Just keep her calm. It'll look accidental." I reread that last one 4 times, feeling the meaning hit me like a physical blow. It'll look accidental. Accidental what? An accident. An event. Something happening to me. The longer I looked at the fragments, the clearer it became that these weren't cheating messages. They were planning something. I didn't know who MK was, but based on the tone and the urgency, this wasn't about a relationship. This was about something that involved me without my knowledge. And suddenly I remembered the Nuki fob, the rental building, the phone secrecy, the sudden shift in behavior. This wasn't just infidelity. Something bigger was going on. Something with layers. Something they were coordinating. My chest tightened with a fear far colder than heartbreak. I backed up those fragments too, adding them to the folder. Then I checked the GPS tracker again. Mason's car was 5 minutes away from home. The gray sedan started moving too, slowly rolling closer to my block. I didn't know what Mason knew or what he suspected, but I now knew one thing with absolute certainty. The timing of everything wasn't coincidence. He was coming home expecting to steer the narrative, to use the envelope, to emotionally corner me with carefully chosen words. But now I had the envelope, the logs, the fragments, the timestamps, the proof. And he had no idea. I had two choices: confront him immediately, or play along long enough to learn exactly what he and MK were planning. I chose the second. I sat down on the couch, kept the lights off, and waited for the front door to open. Mason walked in moments later, calling my name with a practiced warmth, holding a grocery bag as if that were evidence of innocence. But when he turned the corner and saw me sitting there in the dark, his smile didn't falter, at least not on the surface. But his eyes did something else. They flicked to the table, then to my hands, then to my face. A microsecond, but I caught it. A calculation, a check, a question. Did I know? I didn't say a word. I only looked at him, and he realized something he hadn't expected at all. I wasn't supposed to be waiting for him. I wasn't supposed to be quiet. I wasn't supposed to be this calm. His smile finally broke. Just a hairline crack. Then he said my name again, slower this time, like he was trying to gauge the danger. And that was the exact moment I realized something chilling, something I had been trying not to consider, but could no longer deny. Mason wasn't just hiding cheating. He was afraid of what I might have found out. And the fear in his eyes wasn't guilt. It was something far worse. Mason stood there in the doorway, one hand still gripping the grocery bag, the other hovering near the light switch like he was deciding whether he should illuminate the room or keep the shadows between us a little longer. I could feel him analyzing everything: my stillness, my silence, the envelope on the table, the fact that I hadn't greeted him the way I usually did. His eyes darted once more to the envelope, even though I had placed it face down. And that tiny flicker confirmed what I already suspected. He was tracking my behavior just as carefully as I had been tracking his. The air between us thickened with something sharp and electric. He slowly turned on the lights, and for a moment the brightness made everything feel unnaturally exposed. He set the grocery bag on the counter and walked toward me with a cautious smile, the kind people practice before court dates and confessionals. Instead of speaking, he knelt in front of me like he wanted to soften the moment, make himself smaller, harmless, familiar. But nothing about him felt familiar anymore. He gently reached for my hand, and I let him, only because pulling away would reveal too much. His thumb grazed my knuckles, warm and steady, while his eyes searched my face with an intensity that made my stomach twist. It wasn't affection. It was evaluation, measuring risk, assessing threat. I stayed silent long enough that his breathing shifted. People underestimate the power of silence. It makes the liar panic. The truth teller waits. Mason exhaled slowly, like he was preparing for a conversation he had rehearsed. He started saying things about stress, about wanting us to reconnect, about feeling distance he wanted to fix. It was a performance, a soft, emotional monologue designed to disarm me. I let him talk. Every word he spoke sounded like a net tightening around a lie he believed he could still control. After a few minutes, he finally said the line he had been building toward, the one he had planted with the envelope earlier. I just want us to be honest with each other. That was almost laughable, almost, but I wasn't ready to confront him yet. I needed to know how far he would go, how much of a story he had prepared, whether he would slip up. So I asked a simple question, not about cheating, not about Sienna, not about deleted messages or rental keys. I asked, very quietly, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" His reaction was instant but controlled. A slight tightening of the jaw. A blink a fraction to slow. A swallow to deliberate. He shook his head softly. "No," he said, with the gentleness of a man who thinks he has the situation handled. But I wasn't watching his face anymore. I was watching his reflection. In the black screen of the turned-off TV, I could see the hallway behind him. And in that reflection, far back near the corner of the foyer, something else moved. A shadow, a figure. Someone inside my house. Someone who had entered without me hearing. Someone who wasn't Mason. My skin prickled. Every instinct screamed danger. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look behind him. I kept my eyes on him like nothing was wrong. If Mason had brought someone with him, if this was part of whatever accidental thing he had been planning, then reacting would expose that I knew. And right now I needed him unaware. Mason kept talking, pretending everything was normal. I watched the reflection again. The figure stood still now, partially blocked by the wall, but definitely there. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face stayed calm. I needed a distraction. I needed a way to get out of the room without tipping off the person behind him. So I leaned closer to Mason and said I wanted to show him something. He looked relieved, as if he thought his emotional performance had worked. When I stood, he stood too, following me down the hallway. I made sure to move just fast enough that he stayed focused on me and not the quiet shadow behind him. As soon as we rounded the corner, out of sight of the living room, I used the smallest window of opportunity I had. I stepped into my office and closed the door quickly but silently, locking it before Mason could process that this wasn't part of his plan. He rattled the handle immediately. "Harper, what are you doing?" His voice stayed calm, but the handle shook harder on the second try. I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone, my hands shaking but functional. I didn't call 911 immediately. That would have been loud, and I didn't know what the person in the foyer was armed with or how desperate they might be. Instead, I opened the security camera feed from the app on my phone, and what I saw made every part of me go cold. The person in the foyer wasn't a random intruder. It wasn't someone Mason hired. It wasn't the mysterious MK. It was someone I recognized. Someone who should never have been anywhere near my home. It was Sienna. Her hair tied back, her face tense, her posture alert, not seductive, not flirtatious, nothing like the messages. She wasn't here for romance. She was here for something else entirely. Mason was still speaking through the door, trying to keep his voice soothing, a rehearsed steady tone. He told me I was overwhelmed, that we should talk openly, that there was nothing to worry about. The more he spoke, the more certain I became. This wasn't cheating panic. This was control, strategy, coordination. Something was planned for tonight. Something involving me. Something they had been discussing with MK for months. My phone buzzed with a notification from the security app. Motion detected in the backyard. My breath hitched. I switched cameras. Another person. Another figure. Hooded. Waiting. My vision pulsed. My thoughts sharpened to a single point. This wasn't cheating. It wasn't even betrayal. It was a setup. A coordinated plan. Something dangerous enough that they needed multiple people. Secrecy. Deleted messages, and surveillance. My hands trembled as I finally opened the keypad and dialed 911, but before I pressed call, Mason's voice outside the door suddenly changed. It dropped the calm tone. It dropped the rehearsed lines. It dropped everything human. Low, flat, controlled. He said, "Harper, open the door. You're not helping yourself." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't dealing with a cheating boyfriend anymore. I was dealing with something far darker, someone who had already decided what was going to happen to me tonight. And he wasn't planning on letting me decide anything at all. I pressed the call button for 911 but paused mid-tap, realizing any sudden noise could trigger whatever plan Mason and Sienna had set in motion. My pulse was thunderous in my ears, my mind racing through every possible contingency. Every security measure, every piece of evidence I'd gathered from Bluetooth logs, GPS trackers, message fragments, and hidden photo caches. Mason was still outside my office door, his voice low, soothing, rehearsed, as if the words alone could mask the tension in the house. "Harper, it's me. Calm down, please. Let's talk," he said, each syllable designed to lull me into submission. I didn't respond. I kept my eyes on the security feed. Sienna had moved closer to the center of the foyer now, her posture tense, every step deliberate. her gaze sweeping the living room as if she was ensuring no one was in a position to see her. And then the backyard camera lit up. Another figure. MK, the same initials from the deleted messages. Hooded, faceless, standing near the garage, watching, waiting, ready. My stomach dropped. This wasn't infidelity anymore. This was a calculated operation, a plan that involved multiple people, multiple locations, and me at the center. I finally pressed the call button, whispered to the dispatcher to send someone to my address now, and then muted my phone. I had to keep Mason believing I was trapped, unaware, compliant. Every second counted. Mason's voice outside grew sharper. "Harper, I'm asking you nicely. Open the door. Don't make this worse," he said, and the threat hidden beneath the politeness sent a shiver down my spine. I opened the security panel to full screen mode and began documenting everything their movements. The timestamps, the positioning of each person in my house. I had to be precise. Evidence was everything. And then Mason did something I hadn't anticipated. He stepped back from the door and muttered something under his breath, his voice too quiet for me to hear. And Sienna and MK reacted instantly, moving toward different points of the house. That's when I realized Mason had been controlling them remotely, using cues, hand signals, maybe even text messages I hadn't intercepted. He wasn't panicking. He was orchestrating, and that made him far more dangerous than I had imagined. My hands were trembling as I formulated a plan. I couldn't confront them directly, not yet, but I had one advantage: surprise, evidence, and my knowledge of their coordination. I slowly opened a small side door in my office that led to a narrow maintenance hallway, one I had used rarely, but which gave me an unobserved route to the front door. I moved silently, crouching, calculating each step. Mason's voice suddenly rang out again, sharper now, commanding Sienna and MK. And I realized he thought he had me trapped. That overconfidence would be his downfall. I reached the front door without being noticed and opened it just enough to slip through, keeping the door cracked so I could return if needed. Outside, the morning sun was low, the air crisp. I could see Sienna moving toward the hallway I had just exited, and MK shifting toward the garage. Mason appeared at the living room window, his face tightening as he saw the faint outline of my silhouette disappearing from the side path. He yelled something, but I didn't stop. I sprinted toward my car, the envelope from the previous night clutched against my chest, my phone in my hand, recording everything. I reached my vehicle, unlocked it, and as soon as the engine roared, I hit the Live 911 speaker mode. I'm outside my house. There are multiple people here. My boyfriend Mason and two accomplices, female Sienna and MK, are inside. They have been planning something against me, I said clearly, leaving nothing to misinterpret. Sirens in the distance made Mason freeze, and I saw him through the rearview mirror sprint to the side door, realizing he had underestimated my preparation. Sienna ducked behind a column, MK toward the garage. Within seconds, police cars screeched onto the street. Officers moved in tactically, surrounding the house. Mason bolted to the backyard with Sienna, attempting escape, but the police intercepted them before they could reach the street. MK tried to flee through the garage, but was cornered instantly. I watched, adrenaline still coursing, as each of them was detained. Mason's eyes met mine once from behind the police line. Shock, fear, a flicker of desperation. He had believed he controlled everything, but I had anticipated more. Months of tracking, observing, and documenting every detail had led to this moment. My evidence, my patience, my planning had outmaneuvered their coordination. When the officers approached me finally, checking if I was safe, I could hardly breathe from the intensity, but I smiled faintly, exhausted but victorious. Mason and Sienna were led away, each resisting at first, but the truth was clear, recorded, undeniable. MK remained silent, eyes down, defeated. That night, after the police completed the report, and I returned home, everything felt surreal. I sat in the quiet living room, the morning light finally illuminating spaces that had felt threatening just hours earlier. The envelope was still on the table. I opened it fully this time. Inside were the photos, sticky notes, rehearsed lies. I added them to the evidence folder. Nothing sentimental remained, nothing innocent. That chapter was over. The lessons were sharp, and my resolve was hardened. Trust isn't just given. Trust is built, observed, tested, and if broken, it is a lesson, not an end. Mason's betrayal, his orchestration with Sienna, the hidden plan with MK, it had all been uncovered, outmaneuvered, and documented. I was safe, and more importantly, I knew I was stronger than I had ever imagined. The man I loved or thought I loved would face the consequences, and I would face the future with eyes wide open, vigilant, but unafraid.